all of yous. Welcome, 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 lovers, to we have got so many juicy, incredible conversations in line up for you, but here we are today with the neurochemistry of pleasure with Dr. Seven Crow inside of the Pleasure Studio. Welcome, welcome, honey. Hello.
Hello. Here, we'll do a little jar bump. I'm back.
Oh my goodness, how funny. What's in yours?
Fresh squeezed pineapple juice that I made with a little ginger.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
As you know, pineapples are my favorite things at the moment. I have a yummy lover's story with pineapples and a young lover. Every time we see each other, one of us brings a pineapple. It's our thing. But in mine, pardon?
What's in yours?
Turmeric, cardamom, pepper, canela, coconut oil, and tiny bit of honey because it's quite strong, this one. So yeah.
I know it's like quite the rich color.
I know, it leaves my tongue and teeth yellow.
Well, I'm really happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me into the group again so we can talk about the neurochemistry of pleasure, one of my favorite topics.
Well, pleasure turns me on. Neuroscience turns me on. Of course, I mean, I've been banging on for years that, it's all connected. So lay it on me, baby. I'm like, this is like a self-pleasure practice for me.
Yeah. I mean, you really you have I love that you always say pleasure is non-negotiable, and it's so true. It's so true. But we make it like, well, but I have to do this, right? Like always. And that's like the opposite of Dao Yin. I keep going on. Dao Yin is the pleasure principle in Taoist medicine. And instead of like moving towards pleasure, oftentimes we go into this like no pain, no gain kind of thing. That's really big in the United States, no pain, no gain, like there was commercials about it for years. So when we think about pleasure, like technically pleasure is it's creating meaning in life, right? It's like what connects us to things. It is embodiment. It's how we understand our feelings and how we really connect to things, right? So pleasure is that brain-body connection. Like women can really think our ways into pleasure. It's why we often like words and erotica and like, audio erotica. I'm really into that. And that men are, they kind of go the other way. Both are absolutely 100% amazing. However, there's this little lesser known sense called interoception. Have you heard of this one?
No, I haven't.
It's the ability to know what's going on inside your body, right? So like when some people who maybe have anxiety, they'll be like, I can feel my heart beating, right? That's the ability to sense what's going on within. So when it comes to pleasure, that's our ability to know like how we really respond to something, right? And so because men's genitals are located on the outside, it's a lot easier for them to know. Whereas women, we have to kind of dive deeper to find out because ours are inside, right? And so a lot of women, especially if they've had trauma or other kind of like just microaggressions in the world, they're a little bit like, well, I don't really know what turns me on, right? And so the cortisol levels start to get really high and the dopamine and serotonin go low because they're stressed out about the fact that they don't know how they feel, right? And so you start getting this brain-body connection that gets really confused, right? Super, super confused. So in terms of like, well, how does this relate to, the neurochemistry of the mind and the body and how is psilocybin going to help with that, right? The brain-vagina connection, as you know, because you talk about it regularly, that is that mind-body connection, right? Of how we are opening up to not just what turns us on, but also like, well, how does our womb feel, right? Oftentimes it can be geared towards pain if we don't know what's going on. So when women get cramps, their hormone system is kind of off whack, so they're feeling premenstrual. They're feeling kind of, I don't know what's going on with me, right? All of this is about like really getting in tune with what's happening in the body and being able to elicit change through very simple measures. Sometimes it's like, hey, I feel really aggressive and like angry right now because I'm not honoring something. I'm not asking for something, right? And so we get like really mental about it, and then our body's trying to catch up and respond. So that brain-body connection is super, super important, but helping to turn it so that it moves more towards pleasure and less away from pain. And that comes from, you know what? I'm worthy of pleasure. I desire pleasure. I am open to receiving pleasure. Yeah, so that's the first part.
Can I add something in there when you're talking about women, brain being turned on, hearing erotica, and then men, the genitals on the outside and visual. This also has to do with the map of arousal. The female map of arousal is brain, heart, pussy. The man's map of arousal is his cock, his heart, and then his head. This is the absolute gift and exquisiteness. When we look at the yin and yang, we look at opposite poles. End of fucking story. Like we cannot change this in biology. So understanding this is really empowering, because often too, like even it just causes something in my body when I hear, and I know I say it as well, and I've heard, you are worthy pleasure. The fact that that's even a statement that we need to bring forth creates such a contraction and an anger response in my body that is even a part of our conversation. And I know it's a result. This is where I just feel like, oh my God, I brought all of my past lives from outer galactic into this one body, because it's just like, it's not even a discussion.
Yeah.
Whether we're worthy or not. You were born, you're in a body, you're in a flesh suit. You have pleasure and you need it. It's not a matter of gaining worth. It's not a question. It is not a construct that is negotiable. Yeah. It's like you need to drink water because you're alive. Okay? You need to breathe because you're alive. Your body is based through pleasure because you're alive. It is not a conversation whether you're worth it or not. It's not a conversation whether you've got time for it or not. It's not negotiable.
It's non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. And what's so fascinating is that these, more ancient cultures, and when we say ancient cultures, we're also talking about cultures that have survived and are still going. Like we think about Indian cultures, we think about Chinese cultures, right? Where they have these ancient sexual practices that were just a part of living and keeping a state of health and well-being, right? Mm-hmm. And the vulva is called like the pathway to enlightenment, the golden lotus, it's like,
you want to be enlightened and you want to reach the man in the sky, you can only get through to him via the vulva and then the vagina and then the cervix. Like there's all these passageways to get to him. You don't just sit on a mountain and talk to him.
No, definitely not. And so it really, what's really incredible is that when we're really connected, our mind to our heart to our pussies and to the whole area, that helps regulate hormones, right? And so there's this, men have hormones just like women do. And women are constantly feeling either at the mercy of their hormones, or like if they express anything, then it's like, are you hormonal? It's like we've kind of used hormones as this big buzzword about to deny, to kind of poke fun at like the woman's experience, right? And our hormones and our neurotransmitters are linked, right? Like they're messengers that are communicating to one another throughout our body. But we can rewire that in any given time. We do it all the time. Oh my God, I heard something really beautiful. Oh, that made me laugh, Oh, I'm listening to that song and it just like makes my body groove. It's like pleasure is all kinds of things. It's not just like, hey, I'm having 900 orgasms a day, which sounds amazing and slightly tiring at the same time.
It's one thing that's always just made me giggle. And when you go, Seven and I have known each other for 8 years now. And the whole differences, yes. And I often hear, oh, well, that sounds really tiring. And I'm like, that sounds like fucking nirvana to me.
Yeah, and I love orgasms and I love sex, but I've also I want to be able to go to the beach. I want to I have orgasmic moments. I have this friend who has the sexiest voice, and he'll send me these messages that are like about the most mundane things ever, and I'm like, oh. It's like, like finding pleasure in all aspects of my life is just like, it's like, yes, of course, of course. Like even in my work, it's like I love our new program. I love like I've been diving more into the Dao Yin, and I love neurochemistry. It's like what we do in life should really bring us joy. And that doesn't mean like ignoring difficult things. But it's like when you're based in an instinctual space in your body that moves towards pleasure, you're more likely to come up with a solution rather than being like, oh, well, this is really hard and I have to think about it really hard. It's like when you do that, you change your neurochemistry back over. Cortisol spikes, dopamine and norepinephrine and your serotonin go down, and then you're in this like aggressive state. Maybe your belly starts to swell because you're like holding on to, you know, to fat, to your body's in survival mode now. So the way that we respond and move in our life affects our whole being. And so calming down and moving with a sense of humor and moving with pleasure, it's like that changes everything. It changes everything.
Yes,
Right?
the oxymoron, isn't it? The thing of like, well, you need to think it out. Let's get stressed. We've got to find this solution. And when people push, as what you talked about, then the ripple effect of that is an absolute opposite of what you're trying to get. It is like, take a break, take a breath, have a cold shower, have a big long hug with your partner, just sit and, you know, watch a bit of comedy. If sometimes it's like, yeah, just put on a 15-minute comedy short. If you cannot get out of your head, if all of these things don't, you know, you self-actualizing is like ruminating, be entertained by something that's pleasurable. And it could
Yeah.
just be listening to an erotic story. And those 15 minutes, it's like even having a shower, like, oh my God, I didn't write it down. I had another breakthrough in the shower this morning. Oh God, I've got to have like, I need one of those waterproof, I need a whiteboard and a waterproof pen in my bathroom. Because whenever I'm in the shower and I'm covering my body in like the coffee grains, like I make
Hmm.
espresso, then I've got the coffee grain. Everyone goes, oh, you're so suntan. It's coffee and chocolate. You know,
Yeah.
I always, it's like, oh, that's the idea. That's the solution.
And there's a reason why that happens, right? Like neurochemically, when we're trying to like think about things, shit never happens. You're on a walk and you've got, you're just walking, or you're in the shower, or you're driving or whatever. Your consciousness opens up and you're able to receive and download because you're in a flow state,
Mm.
right? You're in a pleasurable, receptive state. And that's why most of us get things when we're in the shower, when there's no pen nearby, because we're in that open state. We're not thinking about it. Everything's softened.
Mm.
We're in the state of pleasure. We're in the state of flow. And that's why creativity can connect, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is why microdosing is amazing, because it helps you get into those states, right? So now you're like, okay, I want to be in flow states on a regular basis. I want to be able to, you know, feel pleasure again without having to think about old stuff that doesn't like serve me anymore. It's like we can keep thinking about and going over trauma all we want, and all we do is keep making those grooves a lot deeper. But instead, it's like, okay, I see it, I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to rewire how I feel about it. And not in a big dramatic ceremonial kind of way. That can be great too. But when we do things in these like small ways in which everything sticks a lot, right? It sticks easier. It stays with you because you're slowly making those changes. It doesn't feel so scary to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm changed now. It's like nothing ever works like that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So having these like flow states where you feel open and receptive, and you're willing to see, you're willing to be receptive to change, whether it's changing something you don't want or being open to a beautiful creative idea that's going to like, further your purpose in life. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of that comes from this softened, receptive yin state, right? That deep feminine state, which we all have, men, women, everybody in between. So being able to soften into the pleasure of it and truly receive, that's how you're really going to get it. It's not forcing it. It's not making it happen,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
There was something I wanted, my finger crossed was, menopause, belly exhaustion. So I've just got to go
Yeah.
back with all the keywords I had in my brain for it. you know, when we're looking at, because consistently too, I think, because, you know, being the age that we are, and I find, because I've researched some words, there's always these adverts around, get rid of your belly fat, get rid of, you know, are you middle-aged, get rid of your belly fat. One incredible thing that we really need to understand, that with us not having pleasure on board, with us being in this constant push, when we're looking at middle age, if we're looking at perimenopause and people are trying to, we hone in on, I've got belly fat, I need to get rid of it. And then it's like the full-on exercise, the full, and then the stress about it, as opposed to understanding the accumulation of not resourcing from pleasure, of not having pleasure as your true north, of not consistently in this beautiful flow, like the flow state, but also the flow of the dance. Oh my God, okay, there's something that needs to be sorted. We need to find a solution from this. Boom, stepping back, having an orgasm, having a cold shower, having a hug. That accumulation reaches, you know, our age, when we're looking at middle age, when we're looking at perimenopause. So concentrating on, well, I need to now go to the gym, or I need to up my gym. We are then once again in more stress, more cortisol. And what, to me, the bigger picture is of how we raise ourselves, that pleasure, resourcing from pleasure, is deemed frivolous, unnecessary, has no value. And this is once again the dogma and the bullying, that the feminine way has no value. The value of not having that value is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
And we don't have to take part in it. And this is also about our sovereignty. Our sovereignty is my experience in my body as a woman is this. And if you can't make room for it, I don't take part in what you have to offer. But we are conditioned to chisel and corner ourselves. So this is what I love. And, you know, like, okay, let's look at the neuroscience of it, but it's what we've known for freaking millennia as women.
100%. And, you know, I'm all about soft bellies. But of course, you know, I am a doctor, I am a health professional. And like, if our belly, because our belly, it's really about like supporting our organs, right? And if we do have too much fat around, it does increase like diabetes, which is, you know, it's actually a really big deal. You know, people not nourishing themselves well, you know, drinking too much, eating really crappy foods and stuff. And so it is about caring for ourselves. But I personally don't give a crap if I ever have a six-pack again. Like, I'm not interested in putting in the work. I'm not interested.
No, who's got time for that?
I'm like, just not interested. You know, I live in a beach town. Everybody's like 20 and supermodels. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good with my high-waisted bikini and doing my thing.
I mean, there is also, I mean, we you know, we walk along the train tracks. I always see everything as a train track. We've got two ideas, two reasons, two belief of thoughts, maybe even more if we're going to go into a city. We've got like one of the city train tracks. And there is a lot of evidence of actually how damaging that is for the female body. I mean, I because you and I talk about this all the time, and a few months ago, I was seeing, you know, I was going to get acupuncture, and you know, in a state of stress, and you know, all of this stuff with my son leaving, all this stuff, like where my brain goes when I'm in stress, because these are all the stories that come up too. And I brought it up one time to bring her. It's like, oh, my distended belly, and she just started giggling. She goes, she goes, come on. I know who you are. I know what you do. So I'm going to be your, she goes, you know that women are meant to have bellies. We grow human beings in them. We have a womb. We have different organs all around, like, you know, different organs. We have different, we're meant to have bellies. And this is your beautiful reminder that any distension is going to be stress. And that how much sleep are you getting? It's like, yeah, thank you. I knew I needed to say it out loud just to have all of my own stuff repeated back to me. But it's like, it always comes down to sleep and the bullying that we're meant to look like we're 12 all the time.
Yeah. And, you know, high cortisol means low serotonin every time. You know, you got high cortisol, low serotonin. Serotonin keeps you calm and keeps you happy, right? And there's all other kinds, like there's the goddess hormones, which are basically like how we store and move fat in our body and how our metabolism changes. And when we're in our 40s and 50s and beyond, we can affect our metabolism. But there's also the story that, oh, well, once you get to 40, you're fucked. And like, like
And I just changed that. Once you get to 40, now you're going to be well fucked.
yeah, no, I love that, of course. But we're also perpetuating stories in our mind, of like, oh my God, now I'm in my 40s. I'm not lovable, I'm not fuckable, I'm not desirable, I'm not all these things that it's like, first of all, that's not true and it changes. And also like like you and I've talked about this, there are orgasms that are available to you in your 40s and then when you stop bleeding in your 50s that you don't even get. I am so excited for that. I'm so jealous. Melissa's like, I know.
And I tell you, like this is I'm gonna, and I'm really like leaning back after some projects, come through, but where I just like, the next decade, the orgasms that I am having now as a woman that is not bleeding are like,
Yes.
no wonder they don't want you to know. It's like, oh my fucking God. Like
100%.
oh, beyond. It's just indescribable. It's like it's all waiting for you, lovers. For all of you women that are still bleeding, I'm sorry, but if you haven't walked through perimenopause yet, just keep going because fucking bejeebus, it is glorious.
Yes. And this is how we need to be approaching it. I've been doing some more, seeing more clients in person here in Puerto these days, which has been great because
I'm so glad.
I love acupuncture. I love like talking to people and, hands-on and all that kind of stuff. And in one day I had one woman who was in her late 40s and one woman who was in her mid 20s. And it was so bizarre. Like the one in her 20s was like this drop dead gorgeous, like supermodel woman who like the absolute hatred she had of herself and insecurity. And I was like, oh, baby. And, and we're working together and she's feeling great and da 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 da. But it's like, I remember being in my 20s and feeling so intensely insecure and like, doing drugs and drinking and dancing and doing all this stuff. And I never want to be in my 20s again, unless I can go back with this kind of wisdom or something.
Yeah, but you put me back with this wisdom.
With this wisdom and this confidence and this humor, like just the seriousness that she had. And I was like, wow, like you're 25, you're very serious, And then this other woman, 48, who, just was like so unaware, just decided she was spiritual and didn't need orgasms anymore. And I was like, wait, what?
You haven't started yet.
And also like, I mean, my orgasms in my 40s are way better than they were in my 30s, and it's like they just keep getting better and better the more I learn about my body, the more that I really embody internally, right? What we were talking about in the beginning is and eating well is a part of that. I'm not saying give up everything, but like eat well, like treat yourself like a freaking queen that you are and like your body is that temple and like put things on that make you feel good and instead of this like, well, I'm like above the body, I'm so spiritual. I'm like, what is that even about?
It's also very masculine. If we think it's a very masculine way of looking at spirituality, the masculine ascend, the feminine descends. Like if we look at this map of arousal thing again, it's like if we keep looking at the energetics of our dharma, of which body we decide to be born into, whether it's a woman or a man, it's like, well, then we have this spiritual work, and the feminine is to descend, bleeding onto the land, coming down into feet into the land, whereas the masculine is coming from their cock, from their arousal, coming up into up here. It's very masculine.
Very much so. Yeah. One of my colleagues and teacher, I've liked his work. He wrote about the Daoyin, and I'm going to have a conversation with him soon because I don't agree with some of his interpretations of it because it comes from he's like, we need to get embodied and come down into the body. And I'm like, yeah. Like, You know, from the masculine experience, that's like, wow, you know?
Yeah.
And all of the old Taoist texts really talk about this and are like, women were considered like, you follow what they say and what they do. And it wasn't until women stopped bleeding that they were allowed to speak out about the tantric properties of things and the practices and teach the other lovers because of this level of orgasm that they don't no one has access to until you get to that. And the
And it's
Taoist.
also, sorry, darling, can I also point out when you're talking about that, because it reminds me of the reel that we both shared last night about the whale. It's also an absolute reverence of the crone stage. So when you're talking about when women stop bleeding, then they can share the wisdom, as opposed to you have all of this initiation. You need your initiation of life. And this is flips on the head the way our culture pushes influences. What the fuck are you influencing at the age of 24 other than the rapage and the pillage of Mother Earth, which you're not going to be able to eat from because of all of the product. This is my like, all of the products that you're pushing, and that we need to look this way and we need to use all of these things. And like, if you have the life like me and you can look like me and you wear these clothes, that is not an influence. That is dogma to keep us shut off. So what I love about what you're talking about is it's not so much like, well, you can't do it until you have 50 years of initiation to walk through.
Yes.
And you have life to live. And through that life, you're going to be making mistakes. You're going to learn, you're going to open, you're going to contract, you're going to open more. You've got to walk through all of these incredible, rites of passage, which is also about birth, raising children, And then when you stop bleeding, okay, now let us know. Now teach. And our whole world, our narrative, our culture is flipped it on the head that apparently someone who walks out of school and is following everyone else has wisdom. I mean, the fact that even people buy into that is like, are you not thinking? Like, has there been any thought process in your follow, in your like, in your purchase? No.
Yes. Yeah, and that's so important to point out. You know, this really is like it's initiation is when you stop bleeding. Everything else is like preparing you and preparing you. It's the last transitional phases. And your 40s is really that place to say, okay, you know what? I am going to start an exercise regime that makes me feel good, right? Not something insane, something that makes me feel good. I am going to take a look at my diet and stuff because it does get harder the older we get, right? And not from this like I have to do it, but like I fucking deserve it. I'm a queen and that's how I'm living my life. And that's how I want to share my life, is from this place of empowerment.
And the fact that we have the right to feel good. I mean, if we're looking at before, we have this perception and we're fed this dogma that as we age, our body's going to ache a lot more and you're not going to be able to move as much and you're going to be sicker and then the absolute, pulling back on the rubber band, the opposite of that is like a slingshot. Okay, you're 50, but you can still look like a 18-year-old did it. And the push, as opposed to as a human being, my birthright is to be well. I'm not here to consistently manage illness. So if you're consistently managing illness, dis-ease, it's like, well, what's going in? How much time are you sitting? So it's more about that as opposed to this exercising. We used to gather, we'd always be walking around. You see, all going to ancient cultures, when we go to, both you and I have traveled extensively in Asia. What are the 60 and 70-year-olds doing? They're squatting as they talk. And you will see and witness, 60, 70-year-old men, 50, 70, 80-year-old women, big grins, they're squatting, they're walking. Everyone goes, oh my God, you see here too, it's like, oh, that poor old man. He's like, oh man, it's just like, peace out, brother. Like I'm only 80. I can walk. And you see like 60-year-old white people from up north, they can't even get on a bus without having to hang on to stuff and and they're so uncomfortable in their bodies. Whilst there's really fit people, and all they're doing is walking. They're just being in life. They're not filling their bodies with rubbish. They're not going to the gym, but they don't need to. Life is a gym.
Exactly.
you know?
And who wants to get to their 60s, 70s, and 80s and just being like, well, I'm just managing illness and hanging out until I die. Like that sounds fucking miserable. You know? My dear abuela, my grandmother is 105, almost 106 years old. Yeah. Well, right now she might be on her way out, but
I was gonna say she's still here. I thought she had passed. I'm sorry, we hadn't.
no, she's just hanging out. Maybe she's just resting, visiting, talking to other people. I don't know what she's doing. She's just hanging. But she'd been walking and she was trying to drive, a few years ago. But like, there's like, no. Which I think's hilarious. But she was walking around and talking and da-da-da-da-da, and she speaks multiple languages. She's in her garden. Like, girlfriend is fit at her age. And I think that that's like, yeah, sure, it has something to do with lineage and genetics, but it's like we all have access to opening up our bodies in this way. And it really comes back to rewiring ourselves for pleasure, that instinctual state of health. This feels good. This does not, right? All addiction is us not listening and being addicted to like holding on to a pleasure rather than really embodying it, right? And yeah, we can get into all the other social constructs and this and that, but when we bring it right back to the simplicity of things, it's like we are constantly rewiring ourselves all the time. Everything that we're looking at, we're scrolling, we're talking about, we're telling ourselves that on a microscopic level. And so when you're working with changing your patterns, it's like it doesn't change overnight, but all of a sudden it'll accumulate, and then you're like, oh wow, I've changed a lot, or oh, I look so different, or oh wow, that thing that used to bother me doesn't bother me anymore, because you're doing these slow gradual, like, oh wait, I just thought, oh, you know what, I let it go. I see you, I let you go, whatever it is, and coming back in. I love myself. I am so sorry I said that about you this morning, sweetheart. I love you. Coming back into ways where it seems tedious at first, but it's this rewiring ourselves back to love, right? Back to pleasure, back to our bliss. And that doesn't need to include a partner. It has to always start here first.
Yeah.
So, like, all of this is incredible. And the neuroplasticity of our brains, it starts to get really rigid as we get older, right? That's why they always say you can't teach a dog new tricks or an old dog new tricks and all that kind of stuff. It's because things get really like rigid in our minds. But what we see now with neuroscience is that things like medicinal mushrooms, like turkey's tail and lion's mane, everybody's hearing about these. They help rewire the brain. Chinese medicine has been knowing this for 5,000 years, right? All of the stuff around psilocybin helps you open up the neural pathways. You're able to create new pathways so that you're not so stressed out. Oh, I really do want to have a yoga practice. This will help, right? So it's not about like getting high every day, but it is about like giving yourself some supplemental information that you take into the body to help yourself rewire into who you really want to be. And that's amazing. We've got plants and fungi around the world that want to support us to live our best lives. Sign me up.
Yeah. It's so, I love bringing parallels. Like, to me, this really works for me, and it works with, my clients that I work with, this parallel. When we have we have all of these systems that we can put in place for our marketing, our email lists, the systems put in place for, okay, even our yoga practice, for our workout practice, for our eating, all of these systems. And when we're sourcing outward, it's like outsourcing. What I so love around pleasure and microdosing is we're insourcing. This is self-partnership. And because I know the conversations, well, God, it's such a big buzzword. Oh my God, there's like everyone's microdose. It's like, have you looked at the type of life that we fucking have forced ourselves to live? It has been trauma-based. We still live in a trauma-based culture. So using an allyship, onboarding, as opposed to using onboarding and creating allyship with microdosing allows us, like, are you really going to do this alone as well? Really? We are being forced to do everything alone. We're forced to raise children on our own, even if you're in a partnership. we are forced to find, oh my goodness. Oh, this is going to, last night I actually did a quick live because I read Jessica Pinn's, one of her posts all around labioplasty and all around, you know, what plastic surgeons are really pushing, that women should be embarrassed about their labia, so therefore get them cut. And they have, oh no, honey, this is stuff that they need to, there needs to be lawsuits and they need to be in court for malpractice for what's happening. But because it's towards the feminine, it never will. So my thing is, it's like, yeah, and we can go and fight. It's like, just stop taking part. So that's, anyway, this allyship, when it's also, what are we filling our brains with? What are we creating? What do we manifest? What are we allowing ourselves to know? When people say, well, this pact around pleasure, the aspect of pleasure, is it really that necessary? You know, let's just do the medicine. Let's just go into ceremony. Like, pleasure is not something I want to be taking a part in, because, you know, that it is dangerous to not be taking part in pleasure, because we then are bullied, we're coerced, and we've been coerced by big pharma. Yes. And we've been coerced by the medical industry that's only interested in making money. We're coerced through birth, as you, I mean, that's another big thing. It's like, we're consistently being coerced to abandon the actual being of being a woman.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
So this part, the huge part, the reason, the why, the big why we need our pleasure on board, is so that we're actually knowledgeable of how our body works, so that we're not being bullied and coerced into the multi-billion-dollar industry. So coming back to microdosing, is we've all been raised through that trauma. And now we have a whole nother aspect of trauma. All of us that are dating again, and all of us that are raising children, we have this pornography industry that is bullying our whole culture. Because, as you know, every woman that I speak to that are on the dating side, like, I'm maneuvering through this with dating, of like, all of the young, and because I'm into young men, they just seem to keep rocking up. It's a huge part is, I'm getting really exhausted of that. Okay, we're going to have the conversation around porn again. It's like, it is imposing in, it's impinging on the way that we get to receive and act on pleasure. So we are in a huge trauma response, and it's not going to stop from out there. To have allyship and to create this sovereignty within our own selves is non-negotiable. It's non-negotiable. If you want to be having children, you need to have this on board. You need to know your own pleasure, especially if you're going to be, well, not just girls, like boys as well. We need to be teaching them. Yeah. We can't continue going on being unaware. We can't continue going on being unaware and not having sovereignty in our pleasure. It's fucking dangerous not to have this on board.
100%. And most of us, because we're so stressed out because of the things that you just mentioned, we're low in serotonin. So we say that, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? So serotonin is responsible for all kinds of things. It's responsible for your happiness and regulating your mood. It helps you think. It helps you sleep and wake. It's about your eating. I know that I'm hungry. I don't know that I'm hungry. It helps with your cognition, temperature regulation, stress response. It mediates inflammation. So what are all those things when they're out of balance? We're talking about stress, but isn't that what happens with perimenopause and menopause? Yes, cortisol goes up, estrogen goes down, all the things, and your serotonin goes down. So psilocybin acts on the same receptors. Mm-hmm. So it allows you, so it's like a natural antidepressant, right? Mm-hmm. But it's the type that allows your body to help facilitate making more of its own. Mm-hmm. That's why people are so into it. I know everybody's into microdosing, but most people don't know why. They're just like, everybody's just doing it. It's like, okay, but this is why, right? Mm-hmm. This is what's really going on in your body. So here you're taking something that's helping you to boost your memory, your cognition, your sleep, your neuroplasticity, your awareness, your introspection of yourself and what turns you on. You have that mixed with practices that help you turn on your pleasure and your creativity and your purpose in life. Boom, you're in the next level and phase of your life, right? You can fast track yourself past traumas and past like all the stressors, right? And instead of being like, no, I have to really like dig into it. It's like, do you though?
Yeah.
Can you just, you've already looked at it for like the last 40 plus years. Let's just move on now. And
Yeah,
so
we don't have to do so much hard work around things.
have to, and that's it, right? Is having these things, these practices, these supplements, these other ways in which support us so we don't have to do it alone, like you were saying, being in community with one another. Yes, it's so important, especially after like the whole COVID yada yada yada, and people are like, I'm disconnected from everything. It's like, okay, well, come on back. Come on back.
Mm-hmm.
Come
Mm-hmm.
back to nature.
And one
Yeah.
thing that just is pinging through, it's, when we're doing a group program and when we're in allyship with plants, but we're also in allyship with one another. What is also often very apparent, or a lot of people can be carrying, is this isolation in our humanness. Well, I'm not good enough. I'm not having the big orgasms. I don't know how to squirt. I actually don't even like my body. All of these things, yeah. And we
Yeah.
self-isolate, believing that we're a problem, we're something to fix, and everyone else has got it going on. What is so powerful, every single time that more than one woman, 2 women, 3 women, 5 women, 10 women, 15, when 20 women gather, I just thought with the retreat I just had. The retreat I just had, these 6 women that came in, 2 women knew each other, 2 young girls knew each other. The other women that were all past their 40s coming in, the healing that happened for those 6 women to be staying in accommodation together, talking together, that alone was beyond belief, let alone the whole practices and everything that we did on the retreat. And every woman spoke about that. It's like coming together, even just for 5 days, but when more than one woman gathers together, she starts to heal herself in the world, because we're like, oh, you as well. Oh, I'm not on my own, because we are bullied. I keep bringing up this word because all advertising is bullying. It's a bullying mechanism. It's a coercion. It's a manipulation. We're manipulated to feel that it's just us. And if we were to reach, if we were to share, if we were to speak up about it, we will be judged, and we're going to isolate ourselves even more from the pure isolation that we're in. And this is also the power of women gathering, because we get to break that cycle. And so coming in together as a group program with the microdosing, with the pleasure, is, we're changing the world doing things like this.
100%. Such a revolutionary act. And, there's been some women who have reached out about the program, and they're like, I'm nervous about being around so many women, and I'm nervous to speak up. And it's like, okay, so be in that, share that, because that's the only way we get through it, is by doing the hard things. It's like me and doing lives. I'm like, I don't want to do a live. I don't know how to do a reel. I don't know. It's like you learn by doing it. And then after you do it, you're like, oh, why was I so afraid of that? Why did that make me feel so anxious? Same thing when we're in groups. It's like, and creating that safe space, because it is important, because we are, diving into important and sensitive topics, and we're going to be, a lot more open because of the medicine as well, but also that that you and I are really good at holding those spaces and listening to and navigating where people are with things, so as women, we really need to just step up and move past some of these fears and being like, you know what, I'm afraid, but I'm still going to try,
It's a part of the huge shift that we all need to make for ourselves, but within our current narrative is women coming together and having each other's back.
Yes.
And even if we don't experience it, we are fed, and we can see it in social media, where women actually really cut each other down. And this is where we get to change it, because you and I won't be that it's to understand it. For anyone that's listening to this feeling nervous, there's others that are feeling the same, which then means we're coming in with commonality, which then means we are holding each other with absolute care. So even being able to express that means that you're being held with care, because it is the ripple effect of that occurs.
100%. I love it so much. So I did have somebody reach out and send me a question for the group. And
Awesome.
so they wanted to know, I've had a number of people ask me like, well, what if I'm on an SSRI or some other kind of medication? And I just want to remind everybody that I'm very equipped at looking over all of your medications and herbs and supplements, and maybe some of them you won't be taking, like certain supplements, depending on how you need them. And when it comes to antidepressants, psilocybin's a little easier to work with when it comes to different antidepressants, but I will go over it with you. And there are some that are a big no-no, but not many people are on those anymore. They're like old classifications of drugs. I worked in mental health for 15 years. I'm very well equipped to understand all the medications and how they interact. I've been working with psilocybin for 33 years. I'm very equipped and understand how it works in the body. So these are all really good questions, and I do go over. That's why I really encourage you to reach out for a call so that we can talk about those things, but also that it's you'll have like outside support as well. So if there is a question or something it feels kind of weird or you're nervous, you have the support to be able to ask those questions. So it's like we're really making sure it's a safe container on all levels. It's like, sure, we could be, drinking cacao and running around in the moonlight high on mushrooms and being naked, which is like my jam, but that's not necessarily what we're going to do in the course. That might be like an after party, Melissa and
It might be
like,
an option that we all create together if people want that, but it's
100%. Like, I'm all about that. Come on down to Mexico and we'll hang out and howl at the moon. I'm into it. Or if we're in Europe, it's like all the above. Howling pleasure world tour.
That's right. Just do let's microdose and orgasm our way around the world. I mean, that would be a fun.
Oh yeah, I'm here for it. I'm so here for it. But I just want to, I really want to remind. I know there's a lot of people out there saying they know how to microdose, and I really do know what I'm doing, and I am here for you. And you'll know when I talk to you. You'll know by the way that I answer your questions and the questions I ask you back. Someone reflected that to me 2 nights ago, and I was like, oh, thanks. Well, I didn't think about it like that, but they were like, yeah, you ask really good health questions. I was like, oh, yeah, I do.
and it's so beautiful. I mean, it's a reflection of how much credit or authority, how much authority. I mean, I've known Seven for 8 years. She was my son's doctor in Peru, and when I say pushed, I asked and I asked and I researched and I kept pushing to get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm gonna take my kid to this person. And that was Seven. I still remember the steps I climbed. I still remember everything. When we found
oh my God,
yeah. And how Ananda was so small, and you hand, it's like you've got Ananda and you handed Ananda off, and then he's like, you took my boy, and it was so beautiful. So yes.
Yeah. Did you see the picture of us I put up on the
website? That's when we had chai. That's when I went back. Where was I? I was in Costa Rica when I went back.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So yeah.
And also too, I know that we're inside of my Facebook group here, and I know, Seven in her group, there's women that are nervous about coming in and talking about orgasm and pleasure. And I'm so pleased, get on a call where we can have a conversation, but also what I want to play. We are also fed a world where our pleasure is dangerous. We are separated by design of whatever. We're not in natural design, but where our pleasure is not indicative of another. Our orgasm is not indicative of another. It's not about being in a relationship. It's not about I need to get them to understand. It's you understanding your own body. As Seven is always saying, it's pleasure in what we do, because that is also feeding our neural pathways, and it's also mirroring our experience in life of when we find pleasure in life. Pleasure is about how we live, breathe, and eat. Of course, we're not going to be in like orgasmic bliss 100% of the time, but we're resourcing back to that to be able to find the solution of the thing that we need to understand or move forward with.
Yeah, and I find by being in that state, it's like even when things are difficult, I don't feel that I stay in the difficulty as
Mhm.
deeply or as long as I used to. It's like I'm like, okay. And instead of being like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I'm like, okay, what is this trying to show me right now?
Yes.
Something doesn't feel good, so what about it do I need to recognize so I can move towards that sense of Dalian, that pleasure? And yeah, and we have such authority over our lives. And we've been taught for so long that we have no sovereignty, we have no authority, no nothing, and instead it's like, no, actually, I can choose what thoughts I have. I can choose how I'm going to express myself and my love. And
Yeah.
maybe, I'm like, oh, I'm stressed out about money or I'm stressed out about this, but I can choose how I respond to that stress. Right. And it's also okay to go into something and say, I choose to go into this and really feel it right now. And all of that is still pleasure. It's like it's still like finding those edges to things, it's not total
Mhm.
distraction, and also that's okay. I have sometimes I'm like, I'm so distracting today. I'm watching all of Outlander for the fourth time because I feel like it. Oh
What
yeah.
was I had a bit of a day like that yesterday. I was really pushing through all of my stuff. Oh yeah, no holds barred is my thing, like the podcast. I went, you know what? I actually went out and laid under the moon. I took all of my cushions out on the rooftop in front here and just went, I am just gonna lay starfish under the moon for as long as it takes. I think I was out there for an hour and a half. Cats went through, the dog came out, and Bella, I'm like, I'm not moving, Bella, until I feel like it. And
That's
we choose to
beautiful.
go through it. It's like you're going through it. This is not about denying and dismissing and bypassing. As you talked, we have 4 primary emotions in the human experience, which is anger, fear, grief, and happiness. To get to resource in here, we need to move through this. We also need to question, acknowledge and question what's happening right now. We have a culture that's completely hell-bent obsessed with 25% of our emotions. And that's,
Yeah,
a lot of spiritual bypassing is about that. I just let it go. Just let it go. It's like,
let it go.
I'm going to be some accountability first, and I'm going to, and if we're just letting it go, we may think, oh, we've let it go, but our body keeps a score.
Hmm.
Yeah. How it stays in our nervous system, where it goes to our organs. If we're holding in our nervous system, we're not letting it out. It then translates into our organs, which translates to disease. One being cancer, breast cancer, prostate cancer for men, all of this stuff. All
All
the
of
stuff.
it.
We could just be
'Cause
here
it's
for
all
hours, as we often are when we talk.
Yeah, it's all connected, just like you said. So it's like it's like, yeah, really diving in and being like, okay, this is real, this is real. Yeah, and being present with it. And that's not forcing it. That's like, okay,
Mm,
I'm being present. I'm bearing witness to my own unfolding,
yeah,
unraveling.
yeah,
That's so important also. And when you do that, even when it's really difficult to sit in that fire of your own ceremony, it's like you come out the other side of it and you're like, yeah.
mm,
and
mm,
and then the thing doesn't bother you as much as it did before, and it's so luscious. It's so luscious to live in life in that kind of way rather than this constant like force and judgment and shame
yeah.
of oneself.
There actually, with hearing you just say that, and there was something that you said before about the microdosing that I wanted to bring forth. I remember, like, when I've shared here before, and one reason why we're co-creating together has been my complete, incredible journey that I went through last year with microdosing with 7. We would have calls, and then because I had the things that I was addressing and that I really wanted to assimilate and alchemicalize through my life. But I'd be on the microdosing journey, getting on with life, and then we would have a call, and 7 would ask me, "Oh, so how is this going?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, oh, oh yeah, no, I'm not reacting to that." And it's not that, I'm sitting down and I'm working through and, I'm getting up in the morning and writing, I will not react to this. It's like the microdosing, the gentle allyship. I'm
Yes.
getting like, it's like, I never felt out of it. I never felt high. I never felt like I was like, gonna lose it and I couldn't work. None of that. But I would
Good.
get to like 4 or 5 weeks along and I'd look back and go, oh, that shifted. Because there's also the intention, as you say, is like when you're taking the dose, and it's like with the lion's mane, with all of these other herbs that are involved in it, when I was, doing my stuff with 7, it's, you had that intention, so you're placing that into the cells. And they're like, all right, what to do? Thank you. Thank you for letting us know. It's like the feminine with the masculine, just let them know what you want. Be clear. What do you need? What do you want? Say it. Don't just go, oh, whatever.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I love how it all comes together. But yeah, thank you for sharing that for people who may or may not know. And then this will go into my group as well, and they'll get to hear that as well. So, wow, what a juicy, juicy day yet again. Oh, loving it.
Boom, boom, boom. All right, love. Oh,
thank you so much. It was fun. Fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for all of you that have come to that, you're watching this every second week, every fortnight for us Aussies. Every second week, we're going to be in my group. Every other week, we're going to be in 7. So 7 are going to be talking each week, but we're just like leapfrogging which groups it's going to be in with this co-creation. So
yes.
under this, I'll put the link to 7's group, and in her group, she's got the link to mine. And so, yeah, come in and play. And so,
and add your questions if like you catch the replay and you're like, oh, I want to ask about that, because we're gonna have different topics that are still within the same realm. Just put it in the comments below, and we'll respond to it.
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Mwah. All right.
Love,
much pleasure to you all.
Ciao.